have to bring, oh, thank you. Thanks, Debbie. It says in the fine print, it says you have to bring your spiritual advisor with you. And I fit very well into a suitcase.
We'll let him know.
All right, a big, well, I don't want to start, but I want to get a few bookkeeping. I hate that word, but get a few announcements out of the way. Um, so we're waiting. Oh, Pablo and Darla are here. Where are, oh, they're there at the end. I'm looking at the view. All right. All right. So now we have to be bi-coastal because out of courtesy to our Florida. How's the weather in Florida? That's where they live, Gainesville. All right, and Christina, hi. Um, I don't see anybody else yet. So I'm going to go ahead and start, but I want a couple of quick announcements. So announcement number one is we always in this class, I always make a big deal about Tu B'Shvat. It is comparatively minor, but then it's, so again, so is Hanukkah, a minor holiday. But it's a fun holiday involving, as you probably know, I can also send material about it. And we will cover Tu B'Shvat somewhat next week too, as well as Purim and Pesach. So next week, we hope you saw the change in the schedule. I keep changing things because I have to. So next week's topic is Purim Pesach with a little bit of Tu B'Shvat. And that is on whatever that Wednesday would be. The normal Wednesday meeting time is, and welcome to February, it would be February 4. Okay. So that is what we're doing next week. On the, and um, I'll come back to the topics in just a minute, or the schedule rather. So what I wrote was, I hope I got this right. Let me double check. Um, sent, sent. I believe I wrote this. So, all right. Anyway, aside from Sam and Emily, whom I meet with for additionally, we have a Monday meeting. Is there anybody else for whom moving the class the week of February 12 would be a problem? Speak now or forever hold your prunes. No?
I'm not sure I can do in person, but Zoom is
Oh,
fine that night.
oh, okay. All right. So, yeah.
Uh,
And by the way, if the weather, I'm sorry, Debbie.
yeah, I don't know. I can't get up to see the schedule on the to see what hours my granddaughter works. So I don't
Ah,
know.
okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, and Debbie, no respect, no disrespect intended, but you're not studying this class in order to get credit for conversion. I mean, you're learning, but I will send you. That's a topic that I did a whole article for the synagogue, which I send every year, and it's very thorough. But there's no replacing Taylor the sights and sounds and food. I mean, you can do it. You know what? I will send you the material, and you can be at home. If you're, do you say you're not able to come for sure, or you
It'll
just
depend on my husband's schedule, which I don't know quite
okay?
yet.
All right. So what you do is, and I will send this out. And the reason I'm asking about this now is to know who might be able to bring what. Um, Without going into the whole teaching now, Tu B'Shvat means the 15th of Shabbat. We're recording 15th of the Hebrew month of Shabbat. The new month of Shabbat, that's the lunar month, begins this Thursday. So Rosh Chodesh, new month, is exciting. So on the 15th of this of that month, uh, the lunar month of Shavat, the rabbis in the Talmud um, debated when does the winter end, not when does spring begin. This is in Israel, of course, and they debated. Said, well, the first of Shavat, because first the new month is always very spiritual, and then they said no, the 15th. So on the 15th of Shavat, they used to have, in the time of the temple, boy, I'm giving the lesson already, but in the time of the temple, just like other holidays, people would bring fruits to the temple, and it was a holy time, even though it's a minor holiday, only because they were very associated with the land. When the temple was destroyed, a lot of things became folk traditions. Even Hanukkah was the folk people did it, and then the rabbis caught on. Let's do this, okay? So that day, the 15th day, which is a full moon, as you know, too, of Shavat, um, became kind of a folk holiday. Again, it didn't really become a big deal until the Middle Ages, but and this is all in my articles, which you'll see, and in all the books. So start reading up on Tu B'Shvat. Tu, B, or B, or by. It's a bit mean the 15th of Shavat. Tu is the Hebrew designation for 15. Don't get me confused. Two what? What's 215? No, it means two, the letters, the Hebrew letters. We'll see this in the article. Anyway, going forward, these groovy people I've been telling you about, the mystics of Safat in the 1600s, they said, oh, wow, this is great. Let's eat the fruits of the Holy Land, and that will bring back the presence of God. And so they devised this thing called the Tu B'Shvat Seder, like a Passover Seder. But instead of eating matzah and wine, well, you do eat wine, drink wine, but instead of eating food associated with the Exodus, they said, we're going to eat prune, we'll eat a date, we'll eat a wheat, we'll eat barley, all the holy fruits of the land of Israel. Going forward in the 19th century, this is all in my article, in the 19th century, little guys would go around the villages. Here, can you give a little money to the people? That sounds like Bob Dylan. Give a little money to the people in Israel. And so the Jewish National Fund was started to reclaim the land. In the 20s and 30s, of course, they did reclaim the land. They bought from sheikhs and different things. By the way, Exodus was just on TV, the movie of a 1960 movie with Paul Newman as Ari Ben Canaan. And it's based on the book Exodus by Leon Uris. So so Tu B'Shvat became associated with Israel, and when I was a kid, maybe Joe might remember this also, I don't know, but kids were always given, yeah, right, Sam, a little blue box. You give a little money, you put a couple pennies in the box, and then you buy a tree in Israel. And I'm getting myself all riled up because there's a funny movie about a forest in Israel, and a couple drives up in a limo, and they say, "We want to see the tree we donated." So they quickly put up a sign saying, "This is the Goldberg tree," and they drive away. Another couple drives up in another limo and they say, "We want to see the Horowitz tree," and they put up a sign, "This is the Horowitz tree." Anyway, even though I'm making fun of it, it was a very big deal. That's what Tu B'Shvat was. And then the 70s hit. And then the 70s brought all this awareness of environmental, culture, ecology. So we had a Jewish holiday that was a Jewish Earth Day. So put it all together, what we have now is a fun little midwinter, end of the winter, depending where you live, holiday in which you can enjoy foods. And here's Pablo's going to love this. Each fruit is symbolically, a fruit for a different reason. So if you guys on the East Coast, if you find out that they're doing a Tu B'Shvat Seder at one of these synagogues in Gainesville, go to that. So yeah, Taylor, what you'll miss out is not being there in person. But what you can do then, I'll send this material out, is you buy, carob candies. And do your kids like fruit? Of course, you don't want to give them too many fruits because then you're going to have baby problems. Oh, mommy, I don't feel well. Sorry.
They love dried fruit.
Dried fruit. So
Yeah.
the Holy Land, the foods of the Holy Land are two grains, actually. wheat and barley. So I make bulgur wheat and a little bit of barley, and then uh, an olive that is actually a fruit in a way. Olive is important. And then dates, figs. I keep on saying prunes, but dates, figs, grapes. Um, I'm not looking at my notes. I know it by heart. Retrita, usera, geffen, not figs. So dates, figs, grapes, olives, and then and the wheat and barley. And then there is also this carob that most of you kind of heard of. You know, you actually carobs do grow on trees, and the carob became associated with Tu B'Shvat also. And then some communities love to do oranges because oranges are big in Israel. Um, in any event, the way I do it is I have a booklet that we will have. I do have it online, and we may be able to do it together. So, all right, back to the date. So, other than Sam and Emily, who are going to make their aliyah, it's what it's called, Sam. You know, you can say, I made Aliyah. Wait a minute, you're moving there? No, I mean, I visited. You know, they're going to go in the summer. So, and Pablo and Darla, you'll be welcome to join us. That's Wednesday. That's 2 weeks from tomorrow. Okay, next important announcement. Tonight we got to do funerals, and I'm going to do it death first and happy stuff later. I mean, because I don't want to end on talking about death and funerals, but it's important stuff. One more thing, and this is totally optional. I'm not plugging, I'm just telling you. I will send it to you, but I can even put it, maybe I'll put it right here in the chat. Your rabbi is very, I don't know, I'm international. I'm very well known. And there is a group in Berkeley called the Aquarian Minyan. I know it sounds like a bunch of tie-dyed hippies, and they were, but they're all in their 70s now. But anyway, the Aquarian Minyan has an online a yeshiva, they call it, an online education program. I got to just switch over here and find it for you. So next Wednesday, for the next 5 Wednesdays, if you're free during the day, because a lot of them are retired. So noon West Coast time, 1 o'clock my time, 3 o'clock yours, East Coast. I'm teaching a class. It's totally optional. I don't know whether it's going to be recorded. Hang on a sec, I'll get it. And its topic, 2 years ago I did Midrash. You know, Kabbalah, they got plenty of people who teach Kabbalah. Jonathan, the rabbi, teaches Kabbalah. So I'm doing and 2 years ago I did that. 1 year ago I did Israeli poetry. This year I'm doing, here is the ad. Okay, I'm doing Israeli poems that became songs. So if you're free from only an hour, 12 to 1 West Coast time, it's a donation. You know, I don't know, it's $75 for the whole class for 5 sessions. You can drop in. You can do it while you're at work. Sam or Pablo both work. And what I'm going to do is do poems. I mean, and you don't have to have any Hebrew knowledge, because I will present the poems in Hebrew and then in English, and then I'm going to sing them, or we'll listen to somebody's, song. It would be comparable here is I'm a big fan of Leonard Cohen. Leonard Cohen wrote poems, Canadian poet, and then he said, "Oh, gee, I'm going to put these to music." Then his songs were picked up by Judy Collins and other people, and he's the one who wrote um, um, the Hallelujah, right? And when he was an old guy. Anyway, songs that became poems. That's the name of the song. All right, let me see if there's anything else. More things. This Friday night, this is for announcements for our in-house folks. This Friday night, Jason is leading services. This Saturday morning at the synagogue at our 10 o'clock our time, we will do, we've been doing once a month Torah study. The Parsha is Bo, and it's the third parsha in Exodus. No service, just the Torah study, and we enjoy doing that. Is there any other? Well, I want to say one other thing. but I want to share it carefully. Um, we just got a date for our first, for people in this group's baked in, but not everybody. That's why I'm not going. I mean, so I want to say, you'll go when this, I say this for Pablo and Darla too, and they're working with, they're joining a community in Gainesville. Don't say, oh, gee, how come you didn't include me? When you're ready, and I know you're ready, and God knows you're ready. You'll go, and rarely, I once in a while I'll get somebody say, I got to go to the funeral, the Beit Din before we get married. All right, but we don't do that anymore, really. So March 27. Where's Mr. Padilla? Come on, Rick. All right. Rick's not here, but he'll get the recording. So Jamie and Devin, Emily and Rick will all be officially Jewish, hopefully, and we'll do that. Is that okay, Em? That I announced that? It just got settled today, and what you have to look forward to. Now, one more thing that is related to that. I started the email. I just didn't want to rush it, or did I send it? Wait a minute. Did I send it already? I just sent, oh, damn, there that computer guy. My computer, I don't know who's good at this. I asked Sam. My computer, my mouse keeps on making these big and small. All right. Yes. Okay. I just sent it to everybody, another document on life cycle, but also a comprehensive, I would call it a mid-course review. And I'm going to put that in the chat too. If we have time, we'll look at that. If not this week, then next week, or maybe the week. But I put both in. There's a mid-course and there's a final. Don't panic. It's not an academic class. You're not getting a grade. But this is from ITJ. That's the Denver group. Um, and if you read it over and begin answering the questions, but these are the kind of questions where, at least in my class, uh, anybody who's been paying attention or get the recordings or can look things up on in the books or in Wiki will be able to answer those questions. It's a review. Let me put it that, I'll say that again. It's a review. It's not a test. I am also going to send, or if I did already send, I may have already sent them, the essay questions that not the essay, the questions for the essay. Is that a better way of putting it? So I don't want to get into it because I don't want people to get all freaked out. I'll repeat it for the umpteenth time. When you go to a Beit Din, Darla and Pablo too, when you go to a Beit Din, they don't schedule your Beit Din unless your sponsoring rabbi and you feel, these are my people. I'm ready to go. Sometimes, I think I told you guys, I had a couple in LA years ago, and Bob had kidney failure. Forgot her name, might have been Jenny. She was taking care of him. They had two kids, or three kids, hers and his. And the girl had just had a bat mitzvah. So, no, the girl was going to the Beit Din before her bat mitzvah. Um, so they asked, the rabbis were old fuddy-duddies. They asked her a couple of questions, and she hesitated. I don't know. Then they asked the 12-year-old girl, and she said, "Oh, of course, this, and this." And they looked at the mom and they said, "The fact that you made sure that your daughter had this Jewish education is proof enough for us." And that was an old guy. That was Rabbi Henry Krauss from the old country. So, all right, enough on that. Anybody have any questions on that stuff? Um, do you want me to put the, no, I'm not going to put the test, the mid-year review in this chat now because it's overwhelming you. Let's go to, I always talk a blue streak. Anybody have any opening shots? Questions on last week, this week? Death, dying? Right. So I want to look at, I didn't give you enough time to answer. Okay. Steph, are you with us? She was eating. Okay. I want to look at this thing I did that, as I said, it's not that I was absent-minded. I just looked at it and I said, and sorry, Darla and Pablo, this is a bit of a review, but it always is good. Maybe you got some new thoughts. I want to, this is, you only see one thing, right? You see one Jewish life cycle ceremonies. I don't want to read it out loud, and I want you to read it out loud. I want you to read it on your own, but I'm going to summarize it, and it kind of relates to what we talked about last week. But I didn't, I'm saying it better than last week. Any Jewish life cycle event, this is for recording purposes, any Jewish life cycle event, those of you who grew up Catholic or are familiar with the whole scene, or even the Jewish ceremonies, the assumption was you have to have a bar mitzvah, you have to have this, you have to have that. Even a kid who hasn't had a brit milah is still a Jew. Um, so the old ways, and I could tell you all kinds of jokes of all sorts of movies, that you'd watch, like um, there's a new movie, we talked about this yesterday. There's a new movie by not brand new, but Adam Sandler with his two daughters. And the title is "You Are So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah." But Adam Sandler really does identify as a Jew. So, but, so there's other ones, and there was several movies where they make fun of the whole thing.
I love that.
What's that?
Love that movie.
Yeah, yeah. You're so not invited. Also, I just remembered the one I remembered was "This Is Where I Leave You," which stars Jane Fonda and uh, Jason Bateman and not Kristen, I think Kristen Wiig. And, it's a family that gets together, the grown adults, and they get together because dad's just died. And mom, who is not even Jewish, insists that they must sit Shiva at the house. And the boys during the Shiva go to the synagogue for a service, but because they all grew up there, three of the guys go down in the school and they fire up a joint. and they come out and of course that sets off the fire alarms. So there's a lot of fun movies about Jewish things. But what I want to say is this is the serious stuff. A Jewish life cycle event is not supposed to be, oh, the rabbi bar mitzvahed me, right? Or the priest, did baptize the kid. True, we do have a function. The rabbi has a function, man or woman, but you don't even need a rabbi to do a funeral. You don't need a rabbi to do a bar mitzvah. A lot of places don't even have rabbis. But so here's what I'm emphasizing: it's life changes are more than biological events or legal events. And there's a word that, and sorry to Sam also and Emily, we did this a little bit yesterday. The word is liminal. Liminal means going from here to there, over the threshold. A psychologist, a good counselor. I was in 12th grade. Now I'm in college. I was married to a lovely person. Now I'm a widow. Oh, give up. So the event, the ritual is developed in order to service the person, not the other way around. So, and then the other things all down there, to make us see something deeper than just, oh, Charlie died or Susie became a bat mitzvah. As I said, my bar mitzvah and many kids of my generation, it was the rituals, but the meaning behind it was lost. That is no longer the case. So uh, Also to reinforce the family, the grandparents are there or the parents. So, okay, so then I go here. Judaism does not have sacraments in the classic Christian sense. They do have these events. We call them life cycle events, ritual events. Okay, so then I go through them, which we talked about last week, the Brit Milah, and this is much more detailed than I was able to do last week. I did it, but there is a more complete description of how the ritual is taking place. I also give here, if you're following, these are some of the reasons why most members of the Jewish community continue to partake in Brit Milah. Again, not to get gossipy, Noam is Israeli, Abby is American. They made the decision for Aviv to have a Brit Milah, and they did. And the girl also, that's the Talia, sweet, she's growing up. She's walking now. So I had a baby naming. So there's the people I mentioned: the Mohel, the Sandek, the Kvater, and then the share of Elijah, which is not always there, but we have a place for, as if Elijah was there. Then I mentioned the Simchat Bat, right? And then I alluded to, but here's more specifics. I have respect for these people. I don't know if it's going to happen. I have had, I think I told you guys there was a guy, an adult, who was not circumcised and did not feel comfortable. And I referred him, at that point, I was more strict. I referred him to a Reform rabbi for the Brit Milah. Herbert, my guy from LA, is going to get a circumcision. Ouch. But they call it Brit Shalom or Brit Chaim, and it's mostly in humanistic synagogues, and no rabbi should turn somebody away. They were not going to say, no, you're not Jewish. Okay, then I mentioned the girls' ceremony. They can just have a Brit Bat, but also some do. Again, this sounds a little strange to those of you who grew up with Christian ritual, but washing something, washing the hand, washing the foot, dipping her finger in water, the idea of giving the girl some ritual. The Hebrew name is extremely important. Why? Because, as Mr. Pablo knows, right, your Hebrew name will be the name by which you are now known, in the Jewish community. I have people, I have friends who have a Hebrew name, a Sanskrit name, an English name, and then their girlfriend or their husband calls them a different name, And something else I didn't go over last week, which I'm not going to either here, is Pidyon Haben. This is when among the Hasidic and Orthodox communities, the oldest boy, like in the story of Samuel, is given to the temple. So you buy the kid back. Here, Mr. Cohen, here's 5 shekels or $5, and you buy the kid back. And it's a very lovely ceremony. Another thing that you may not know about is Upsheren. And look this up in Blech. Upsheren is, I know this sounds trivial, and it may sound strange to some people, but boys in the Hasidic and Orthodox world, they keep their hair long until they're 3 years old, and then they cut off all the hair except for the payas. And it's the meaning of it spiritually. I wouldn't do it. I don't have a kid, but the meaning is, you belong to the mother, and we need to, keep. So you see these little boys running around that look like little girls until they're 3. Usually you can tell. All right, bar mitzvah we talked about at length, and here's the review for you of, we did this in the class. Here are things that you would see, and as I said to Pablo and Darla yesterday, and Sam and Emily, I think you've been to some. There is no replacement for going to a service, going to a synagogue, and even if you're not a friend of the family. So, I can't go because I don't know them, or they didn't invite me to the reception. Um, it's a great way to see the whole synagogue show up. All right, moving on. I wanted to tell you a joke last week, but I'm not going to. It's just wrong. I might tell you a joke about my grandfather. Um, you all know I have a bawdy sense of humor, but I don't want to get in trouble. Um, um, Death is difficult, obviously, and it's something that a lot of people, either Americans and Western world, um, kind of avoid. Um, but I want to, again, this is all material that you I sent to you. We're going to look at the, I got to stop my mom. That's my mom. And then do you see, okay, I lined up everything. Do you see a time to mourn? Blue screen? Yes. Okay. And then there's love, marriage, and sex. This is from ITJ. Um, all right. Well, I'm not going to read everything here, but before we get to death, I think it's important for us to talk about life. And unfortunately, I, as a chaplain and as a rabbi, have been around it, maybe not as some other people have, but when a person is ill, we do the standard thing. Oh, so and so, get their Hebrew name, do a Misha Beirach, include them on the list. Again, in the Orthodox or Hasidic world, it's a big deal, but it's not like Misha Beirach. That's a Debbie Friedman. That's wonderful. But in their communities, it's just Saturday morning, you know, and just like with Kaddish, you go around the room. Anybody, and usually, in fact, they don't even go around the room say so and so, so and so, so and so. Usually the rabbi has a list. So you got to be prepared. If you go to a more traditional shul, you don't usually get to raise your hand and say, I want to ask a blessing for my friend Bob, but that's become more normative, even in Orthodox worlds. So the tradition was the rabbi or somebody or uh, what was the name? I already told you this. The Gabbai, the person who's guiding the Torah serves, will have a list. Shmuel ben Avraham, Avraham ben Yitzchak, Rivka bat. Oh, by the way, when you do a Misha Beirach, customarily you do it on the mother's name. It's like God listens to the mothers, or you say them both. I say it's mothers first. So even though you may know this, you get called to the Torah. Moshe ben Mordechai, or my mother brought it. We added Chana, but if the person's sick, you'd say Moshe ben Chana or Moshe ben Chana the Mordechai. So mother comes first. Anyway, this is a story from Talmud that I say tell. I even put this on my mailings. Rabbi Yochanan was a famous, it's not a healer in our terminology, we call him a healer, but he was also a very handsome man. And his stories about him, he would go and stand in front of the mikveh. And I'm not being bawdy. Women would go to the mikveh before they're going home to have relations with their husbands, and they would see him and they would go home and conceive. In other words, he was a playboy, he was a good looking guy, but he also had healing powers, according to the Talmud. So here the story is, Rabbi Yochanan went to visit Rabbi Yechia Bar Abba, and he says, give me your hand. It doesn't mean literally, oh, give me your hand, I'm going to raise you up. It's spiritual. So he raised him up. And then the same story continues in the same section of the Talmud. But what happens when Rabbi Yochanan gets sick? Right? Then Hanina went to visit him, and there's a whole discussion which is more relevant. He says, "Do you want your suffering?" Because that was a theology of their time. Oh, your suffering is good for you. It's good to suffer. Says, no, don't talk to me about that. I don't want. I don't. I feel like crap here. I got 103 temperature. So then Hanina holds his hand and he raised him up. What does it mean? It doesn't mean literally he picked him out of the bed. It means that his visit heals him in a sense. So I used to talk about this in terms of the prison. The prisoner, I worked in a prison for 16 years. What if I was in prison? I mean, my God, those people who know me here, I was in the hospital. Is it 23 or 24? I got, I lost blood, and I had very, very serious. I could have died, but I didn't. But they fixed me up pretty quickly, and people visited me just like anybody else. So visiting, I mentioned this in our discussion. couple of months ago, Bikur Cholim is one of the highest mitzvot you can do. And I'm not going to go into the great deal of it, but if you get a call that says somebody wants to see, or that so-and-so is sick in the hospital, or they're at home, visit them. And there's a lot of the Shulchan Aruch talks about this. That's the book we talked about 2 weeks ago that was written by Joseph Caro. They said this is not he has this part also. He says you should not sit on the bed. You should stand by. You should, if they're lying in the bed, you should sit on a chair. If they're not able to get up, don't you stand, hi, Bob, how are you? Because they're reminding them how lousy they feel. You try to sit close to them. So this is all stuff I learned in my pastoral work. Then there's also this passage that if a person is very ill, now that's where hospice has come in today. If you know that somebody's very, very ill, it is forbidden to do anything that will hasten the death, or it is forbidden to delay the death. Okay, so there's another story. I'll shut off the share for just a sec. There's another story in the Talmud. It's fast. These are all amazing stories. A bunch of guys are standing outside the home of a rabbi, and they're praying and they're praying and they're praying. Oh, maybe so and so get well, get well. He's gone. Not gone. He's what they call a goses. Goses means he's already on death's door, whatever they had back then. So everybody's praying, and their praying is keeping him, in a sense. This is the theology. They're praying so hard, they're keeping him in his misery. The maid, or a woman who's from upstairs, throws down or pretends to drop a pitcher, and it lands and it crashes, and it surprises them all. Boom, they stop praying. In that moment, the guy dies. In that moment. So the theology behind that is, and Emily is a therapist, you might relate to this, anybody who's been around. If I went to someone's home and I'm a hospice chaplain, I'll go in, I'll visit the person. Maybe they're conscious, maybe they're not. Sometimes I will say to the family member, let's go talk in the other room. Why? If they're conscious, the person who's sick, it's all about compassion. Pablo's 99 said, you're conscious of the comfort of the person who's ill, the comfort of the person who's going through this process. I'm watching my mother die, or watching my husband die, or God forbid something worse. But by leaving the room, they say you're allowing the person to do their own process. I could go into other stories. I just heard today from a woman in Long Beach, a former congregant of mine, Lauren. And Leora's dad, she was a member of my community, and Leora's dad was one of these, really rational scientists. And his wife had died previously. So his wife had died, and he gets sick, and she said, "Please, Rabbi, come over and visit my dad. Don't get into spiritual stuff, whatever. Just talk with him." I did. I talked with him. I sang some songs. We talked, and then he comes out and he says, I saw my wife yesterday. This is a scientist. He saw his deceased wife. Or then she told me later, he keeps on telling me there's a man who keeps coming into the room. Now, it wasn't the doctor, it wasn't the nurse. So, in other words, his rational mind is seeing angels. This is what I'm thinking. He's seeing his wife. Again, Pablo's understanding this. I'm glad I'm giving you some little Kabbalistic tidbits. When whatever it is, whether it's the soul making its journey, or the our mind. So I shared that with Lauren, and we always kind of chuckle about it. Okay, more on this process, but I don't have the time to do it. So where was I? Share screen. The journey is, I hope Joe's still with us. Yes. The same issues go, here it is. The same issues are, now I keep on looking at this wedding thing. Okay. The same issues come up with regard to the funeral. Everything is there are several concepts. They're in here. Kavod hamet, the honoring of the deceased. Um, Preparation of the body. This is all in Telushkin and in Falcon especially. We have here smaller synagogues like ours. I read, Sam, that Har Shalom has one also. A Chevra Kadisha. Chevra means group or society. So the burial society is composed of usually of pious, doesn't have to be pious, but people who are entrusted that learn the skills of preparing a Jewish body for burial. We do not do embalming. The body's there, and you're seeing the guy that you knew a week ago, and it's very emotional. But what in smaller communities like ours, that's done by members of the synagogue. So here at Mount Sinai and down there in Fort Collins and other places, it's actually done by members. In a larger town like Denver, Philly, New York, LA, they take the body to the what do you call it, to the mortuary, and the mortuary hires or brings in several Hasidim or several other religious people. It's not it would be better if it were people who knew the person, but it's also very emotional. So okay, so the person is prepared, they've died. I skipped a little bit. There's more material that the rabbis get into. I don't want to get into the question of suicide or euthanasia. It's a lot to cover, but generally speaking, in the Jewish world, well, I do have to. My very first funeral was a suicide. Can you figure that one out, right? So this young man shot himself in his parents' home, very emotional, and we had the funeral. But I went into they cleaned up the room, thank God. But I went into the room where he had been, and I spoke as if to him. Now, this is because I had taken some Kabbalah classes, and then I went out and talked to the family. Tell me about oh gosh, I don't remember his name, and I don't want to say a name I make up. Maybe it was Jacob. Anyway, and then the funeral, this is my very first funeral. I'm still in my 5th year of rabbinical school doing this. And the funeral was packed. Kids, young kids, but also his friends. And we all stood over the grave, and I asked them to speak as if they were talking to him. So every funeral, you probably know this anyway, every funeral, just like every bar mitzvah or brit milah, is going to be very, very different. But some principles are very uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Immutable. Honoring the deceased, honoring the mourner. How do these things bang up against each other? If the deceased says, "I want to be cremated," right? Well, most rabbis in the modern context, reform or non-traditional, will say that's their decision. I will tell you honestly, I'm not in favor of it because the body should disintegrate normally, but people want to do it. And then they have the ashes. Again, you want to see a funny movie? The Big Lebowski. It's kind of a weird scene with over the Malibu. Well, I did a funeral on a boat with a cremation, and it was just like that. It was a bunch of ashes, and the ashes are blowing all over the place. So I believe that the natural process is more meaningful. But I have done memorial services when people want to have it, and then you do that. Okay, so for the mourner, these are the things that, and I will send the material in more, I have it on the sheet. When I do a funeral, I often have to explain all this to the family. Got to watch the clock? Okay, quarter of. So let's assume the body is prepared. I'm not going to get into all of it, except there is a shroud that's put over them. It's my father, may rest in peace, wanted to have shrouds, but he was not a religious man. He just felt it was the Sephardic way to do it. So it was done by some company and so on. But another thing you probably know is that a Jewish casket is supposed to be plain, simple, and not ornate, right? The casket has to disintegrate just like the body does. But I got news for you. Even the most simple casket costs $4,000 or $5,000 these days. Maybe not 4,000, but so they have to have no nails in them. It's completely wood pegs. So if when the time comes, in advance or when grandma has died, you go to the mortuary and all the mortuaries I know, even the non-Jewish ones, have these caskets. A news for you all. In Israel, both Muslims and Jews do not use caskets. Isn't that amazing? First of all, wood's expensive. Second of all, it was never their custom. They just wrap them. When you watch one of these Palestinian funerals where they're yelling, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, or a Jewish funeral. So you go and you have the hole is dug and they put into the ground very respectfully a wrapped body, no casket. That only came into being, I think, in the late Middle Ages, and of course we adopted it. Another thing, and probably most of you know, but I'm reminding you, we do not have an open casket. My parents, my mom, when my first funeral, I was only 9, and Grandma Jeanette died, and it was a big funeral, and they walked by, and I'm looking at this dead body. Oh my God, my grandma and she died of a heart attack. Today, maybe she would have been able to be, I mean, not today, but those days they didn't, just dropped dead on the lawn. Maybe she was about 70, I don't know. But again, out of respect to the dead. So we honor the deceased and we honor the loved ones. They do, and this is weird, they do say, this is how they get around it. Jewish mortuaries will say, do you want to come and view the body? So they'll call up the closest relative and they'll have the casket open in the back room. I don't like it, but they do it because they want to make sure that the person has identified the body, you know, or they maybe want to say something or put something in the casket. But generally speaking, everything you would see, or some of the things you would see at a Gentile funeral, you would not see at a Jewish funeral. It is also not customary, although it's done, to have any pictures up. These days, I think it's not wrong to say, as you walk into the hall, here's a picture of a big plaque of the person when they were alive and vibrant and so on. But in other words, in the Jewish ceremonies, we emphasize it's strange. It's not strange. It's painful. We don't we don't want to say we're going to take away your pain. That's why we don't have flowers at a Jewish funeral. Again, people want to bring flowers. Okay, go over there. So it's done. I mean, a lot of things have changed for the worse. I'm saying the traditional ones that I believe that I would do would be those traditions. So the body is prepared. They're put in a casket. The family comes through. Oh, good, it blew up. That's a good thing. I don't know why my mouse tends to make its own decisions on what should be big. All right, Korea. This is all in your reading. Korea is the act of tearing a garment of clothing. Now, I should get into this a little bit. Mourners. Who is a mourner? I'll talk about Korea in a minute. Who is a mourner? Technically, up, down, across. Fathers, mothers for children, children for their parents, their direct parents, not grandparents, and then spouses for or siblings. God forbid, my sister keeps on asking me, "Did you make your will yet?" I'm healthy, thank God. But people sometimes say, "I want to say Kaddish for my grandfather." Just like today, people want to say Kaddish for people who, yesterday was Holocaust. Remember the International Holocaust Day, because that's the day they liberated Auschwitz. But we have our own Holocaust Remembrance Program in April. So now, when you come to the funeral, the immediate family will be brought into the either inner room, and they're given a little bit of time away from all the guests. Oh God, I gotta say hello to Aunt Mildred. No, you don't. Let Aunt Mildred sit herself down. So the immediate family will sometimes come in. I'm there, maybe the funeral director is there, and we give them each a ribbon. And instead of the kriya literally meant and does mean tearing a cloth. Your shirt. I mean, again, my experiences, I hadn't yet become a rabbi. I was working for a guy named Fico in Ficol in Israel, and he was a South American Jew, but he was Orthodox. So he's the cook, head kitchen guy, and I believe it was his mother who died, and he sat shiva at his house on the kibbutz. So we went to, and this is another thing about shiva I'll get to in a minute. Every day we went over to his house for a service. Every day until he was finished with his shiva. And so traditional people will actually cut a shirt or a tie. A woman would share a blouse, and it's not ripped up to shreds. That's again what I'm getting at. Out of respect to the dead, we tear the garment to sort of say, oh, a piece of my heart has been torn out. But out of respect to this has to do a lot with, rituals. You don't go overboard. You don't create what's called in therapy complicated grief. Oh, I can't go to. No, for 7 days, you sit Shiva in your house. 7 is Shiva. People come to you, they make meals for you. Some people say, no, 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 I don't want to do 7 days. I just want to have a nice little meal afterwards, and that's it. Or 3 days or something. Depends on where you are, but traditionally, they come to your house and they make your meals. And none of this, I got to order from the caterer. Your friends are ordering from the caterer. So again, that's one of the reasons why, and that's why I said to you, Pablo, I kind of like the traditional ways, but I don't like their politics and their narrow-mindedness. In Israel, some of these things happen. So I jumped ahead to the Shiva because I haven't covered the funeral. But the person, the immediate mourner, is not required to come to services for that period of time. Again, my mom, when my dad died, my mom was not that religious. She said, where else would I want to be? I want to be at services. Dad was buried on a Thursday, maybe it was a Wednesday, and she wanted to go to services so she could say Kaddish. What was I supposed to say? No, Mom, they have to come to visit you. This is San Diego. It's a big area. So we went, and I mean, I was a mourner. I was not the leading the service. It was the cantor was leading the service. The regular Friday night service. All right, back to the service. As you probably know, and I'm going to show this in a minute, the event itself can be very short. Not short, but it can be very simple. Psalms, the memorial prayer, the eulogy, and then the actual burial. Somebody told me, I think Jason said that the Native Americans also bury their dead. None of this, leave. It's all antiseptic. Now, what happens in reality is people stay, the casket is lowered, they say the Kaddish, and then at least, we usually stay at least until the top of the casket is covered with dirt. And you put the shovel back into the pile. Again, they have weird traditions here in Cheyenne. They learned them from other rabbis that you put the shovel in backwards. Okay. So as I was getting at, this is just their slide. The stages are very interesting also. It's a little too big. Let me shoot it down a little bit. The stages of Nichum Avelim, comforting the mourner. So I am a mourner. Okay. So there's a term that's not in here. For 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, the person is considered an oninut, an onen. It means like, hey, they just died. I don't want to have 15 phone calls. So you don't bother them before the funeral. In reality, people got to take care of wills. They got to take care of, they go find a casket, whatever. So, but it's not traditional. You don't go running over to their house when their loved one was just there in a hospital bed 24 hours earlier. They died. I feel so badly talking about this in front of a 90-year-old holy man. Joe, we love you. All right. Maybe Joe, maybe you'll live longer than me, man. All right. I'm not, I don't want to make any jokes. But
Please,
anyway,
please, 92.
92. I know I said 90 plus. Okay. All right. Anyway, these are practical, meaningful rituals. Like I said, you don't allow the person to go, oi, forever, forever. Like King David, there's a whole scene in King David. His own child died. So, and he's ripping his garments. And so what they did was they instituted stages. Stage one, Omninut, which is not on this page. Um, I'm I'm in shock, I'm in mourning, but the rabbi needs to come to the house, or the friends come to the house, just the closest friends. And that's when I talk with them. And it's unfortunate, but that's when I have to kind of get, tell me about your dad, tell me about your wife, tell me about, hopefully I've asked them to do that ahead of time. Um, then is the ceremony, which I said. So it's called Avelut. I'm an Ovel. And Ovel means I'm in mourning. And as you know, here's Aninut. Excuse me. It gets cold and it gets hot. Aninut is, like I said, 24 hours. Traditionally, the funeral's supposed to be done 24 hours, later. Reality doesn't always happen, especially if people are coming from a long distance. Also, funerals are not done on the Shabbat or on a holiday. So then the person is in Avelut, which is all of these stages, 7 days of actual mourning. Again, mourning is a relative term. It takes different forms for every family. My mother, my father, Grandpa Eddie. I got to tell you, Grandpa Eddie, to lighten things up a little bit. Grandpa Morris, my dad's father, was very traditional. I mean, for Sephardic Jew. I was only 16, and my dad flew to New York for the funeral. It was a big deal because Grandpa Morris was um, a donor in the Sephardic synagogue, and they drove past the synagogue and they stopped and they opened the doors of the synagogue and the hearse. And because and my dad was like freaking out. Why? Because they loved Grandpa Morris. Grandpa Eddie is buried in the same cemetery, by the way, where Debbie Friedman is buried in Harbor Lawn in Orange County. So, and several aunts as well. So, I was a little older. I think I was in college. And we went to my aunt's house, Aunt Lois's house. So Grandpa Eddie was a little bit like George Burns. You remember? George Burns was God. Hello, hello, George Burns. So he was a character. He lived through the Depression. He was not at all religious. My mom had my mom's sister, Aunt Lois, and this is family gossip, but it's so old. My mom's sister Lois had married a guy named Chet, who is not Jewish. That's not important, but Chet was a hunter. He voted for Wallace. He was one of those dudes who had the camper and the guns. He was not a bad guy, but we went over to their house. He was, come here, Marty, come on, let's shoot some baskets. And he was not a very friendly guy, but he had an affair with the next door neighbor, and then he moved in with her and he married her, right? So Grandpa Eddie once said to Aunt Lois, if Chet comes to my funeral, I'm going to jump out of the ground and piss in his eye. I'm messing up the thing. So we're all sitting around telling, at Aunt Lois's house, telling Eddie stories. And my mom and my aunt are sitting there. Do you remember when we went to the restaurant in New York and he pinched the waitress's butt? He did this and he did this. So not always, it's not always going to be oi, oi, oi. Traditionally, yes, there's a lot of ois, but it's also a time, and it's that Forrest Lawn says it's a time to celebrate a life. Never, never, never. If you're ever asked to do a eulogy at the funeral, maybe not just the rabbi, but some of my friends come up, it might be nice to tell a fun story. I remember when Jack and I went fishing, and I caught a little fish and he caught the big fish, or when we used to go bowling. So those are great, but you never want to tell, you never say anything at a funeral that is, I'm sorry, is it keep on getting bigger and smaller? You never say anything at a funeral that is in bad taste or critical. And God forbid, but this happens, I've dealt with this a lot. You all know this. People come to the funeral that are longtime enemies or family members you haven't seen, and they can't stand each other. So it's a time of healing. It is a time to forgive. And if I ever do a funeral where that's the case, I don't go into it. I say, yeah, I know you guys are still fighting with each other over his money or whatever, or you're divorced from him. You just say, look, folks, this is a time to forgive. This is a time to think about Uncle John or Aunt Susie and forgive. So I started to talk about the stages. So stage one is before the funeral. Stage two is the 7 days. Stage three is, and this is in your readings. I got to leave enough time to talk about weddings. Is Shaloshim, 30 days, including the 7, in which it's traditional not to go to a funny movie, a comedy show, but you can still watch the news. The news is pretty sobering anyway. And then it comes to, there's one they skipped here. After 11 months, it is customary to have the unveiling. Oh, that's down here. And then every year on that anniversary, in the word in Yiddish is Yahrzeit, a time of year. That in Spanish and Ladino, Pablo, it's años. My dad would use the term años. And there's another term in Israel too. So now the question is, well, Rabbi, do I observe the secular anniversary? He died on November 10th, or God, I thought of that. Here it is. This is a great slide. Or do I keep the Hebrew date? Well, look it up on a Jewish calendar. And my suggestion is to keep the Hebrew date. So there it is, laid out. Shiva Shloshim, 11 months. So why 11 and not 12? Because they say, well, the righteous, it only takes 11 months for the righteous to get to heaven, to get to whatever, not to heaven, to get to the Gan Eden. And for those of you like Mr. Varela there, and I want to talk about this too, and perhaps we'll have time another time, more on Kabbalah. My friend, if you want to look up a great book, Simcha Raphael, Jewish Views of the Afterlife, Simcha Raphael, Jewish Views. If I don't have the title right, I may be wrong, and Simcha is a psychologist and was writing his thesis, and his wife, Gila Razel, is a rabbi. They lived in the same apartment building as me in Philly, so we're old friends. But he approached Rev Zalman, again, my great Rebbe, and Rebbe Zalman would sometimes say, you're working on this PhD. So he did his PhD on this topic, and he also studied cross-culturally the Hindu, the Buddhist, the Christian. And so it may be relevant, although it's not my topic tonight, it may be relevant to know that, and this is why I am, in my left brain, I'm a rationalist. In my right brain, I'm a Kabbalist. While we're saying the Kaddish, they're going on their journey.
Raphael,
Yo.
the angel Raphael, the healer.
Huh? Raphael, yeah, well, that's why his name was Simcha Paul, Steve Paul. And this happens a lot. When you get married, a lot of people take a new name. So he and Gila both took the last name Raphael. That's a really side deal. But he just like me, he's on Facebook. So he'll send out he grew up in Toronto. So send little pictures of, this is me at my bar mitzvah, Steve and Paul. But yeah, I am Moshe Raphael Halfon. I took the middle name Raphael. Yes, it's a beautiful tradition.
That's my
Anyway,
middle.
huh?
That's
But,
my middle name. Raphael.
huh?
My middle name is Raphael.
You Raphael? Eres Raphael. Raphael is a great name. A lot of Latinos can have Raphael. I forgot that. Okay. Why don't you just stick with Raphael instead of Shaul?
Well, Papa from the first name. So
Both. Okay. Shaul Raphael. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. Well, some of the people in this room are working on their Hebrew names. So I'm not going to be able to do this to do it justice, but Simcha wrote this whole book in which he describes in the Hasidic tradition how the soul is journeying through the afterlife. I would never want to say to anybody, take it literally. That again, this is why if you talk to a Reform rabbi, we're more concerned with what you did in this life. Talk to a conservative rabbi, we don't know. I don't know. But once I was taking a walk with Rabbi, I'm full of stories, I took a walk with Rabbi um, gosh, what was his name? Um, the old rabbi from Temple Israel of Long Beach. Um, it'll come to me later. Anyway, the guy was in his 80s. He was a Holocaust survivor not survivor, but a refugee from Danzig. As soon as I say Danzig, it'll come back to me. Anyway, very reformed, very classical reform rabbi. And we're walking arm in arm. I'm holding him up, and we're walking around the canals um, of of Long Beach, and I say, gosh, I know I got to look up his name. Anyway, I ask him, do you believe in the afterlife? Do you believe that Temple Israel, Long Beach? Oh, Wally Kelter, Wally short for Wolden. So Wolden Kelter. So Wally Kelter says, I believe that when I die, I'm going to see all my loved ones on the other side. And I'm talking to a classical German Reform rabbi. There you go. I don't have answers. I have questions.
I
Okay.
have a question.
Yes, ma'am. 8 o'clock. Yeah.
Is it still, oh, sorry, is it still a thing to cover the mirrors?
Yes. There's a lot I didn't cover. It is still a thing. Yeah. It's sort of interesting you use that. Again, this is all about traditions. It is that there's mystical and there's practical. The practical reason, I'll give that first, is uh, I look like crap. Oh God, I got to do my mascara. Oh my God, I got to shave, So don't look at yourself in the mirror. It's like vanity, So there was a reason why they would cover at least one mirror, usually the main mirror in the bathroom. Some people will go through the whole house and cover every mirror. The spiritual reason, if you must know, or the Bubba Mice is the old wives' tale, is the spirits are going to come out of the mirrors were thought to have, mystical connections to the other side. And you watch movies like, Twilight Zone, where the guy says, "Hi, this is me." So it's really weird. So they were suspicious of that. So it's both and. The reason that I always give people, again, if somebody says, "What should I do, Rabbi?" I will say, "Let's tear the ribbon. Let's have um, a meal at the home. Let's invite your friends over. Let's talk about the loved one." And another thing about the Shiva that's really important is, you don't put on disco. You don't put on, the sports. Maybe in the other room. Again, it depends a lot on the family. Um, so I guess I'll conclude this by saying that the traditions are there to circumscribe the grief, to give structure. Am I summarizing this well? You'll give me a grade. To say, do this, do this. Also, because in mourning, you need structure. You need things to do. Again, I can't compare this with Catholic or Christian rituals, but it's coming back to those things. Everything for the comfort of the dying person, for the comfort of the mourners or family, and then to get them back to society. That's why they um, bring food to you. Because if you're stuck cleaning the house, and people will stay at the house and they'll clean up afterwards. So, but thank you for asking that question. The mirrors. Um, there's more that's done at the cemetery. Um,
I have a story.
what's that?
I have a story.
Yeah, okay.
And my
Your own family?
father, of course, was Jewish. My
Uh,
mother was not. She had been born or raised Catholic.
yeah.
She never converted to Judaism, but she all but did that. But anyhow, when my father died,
Yes.
they were in a very small apartment. Small, it was one big room.
Yeah, right. It was in Brooklyn, right?
This is up in Fort Lee, New Jersey.
Fort Lee.
So it's there we are. My father's sister and friends from his childhood come, and they're all sitting together. And they're
On the couch. Yeah,
couch,
right.
they're quiet.
Mm-hmm.
They're thinking.
And
My mother's relatives came. They were at the other end of the room.
uh-huh. Oh.
And
So is that the story or are there more? I mean, did they start talking about well, we're gonna do the Catholic stuff over here and
I don't know. What the point is that my mother's relatives, my relatives on my mother's side,
right,
were there. They had beer, they had whiskey,
right.
they were having a party.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only way I can describe it. And there I am, the only son.
And you don't know where to go. Yeah.
I go over here
Uh-huh.
for a while.
You mean the Catholic side was having more of a like a wake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my father's side, I go squeeze my aunt Frida aside,
Mhm. Right,
sit down, then back and forth.
right.
By the end of the day, I was schnockered. Enough said.
Yeah, enough said. Yeah. You were schnockered and also you realize you're how old were you? 16, 14?
Oh, no, no. This was when I was 25, 30, no,
25.
28,
Right.
28. Sort of,
Fascinating.
sort of married.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, both with all these ceremonies, weddings, bar mitzvahs, brises, anytime you have this is my issue or problem. Whenever there's interfaith involved, and this is why, no offense for anybody, but this is why it's important to make a decision before you get married or when you're married, say, and this is on my pitch. I'm not trying to preach or judge. Just say, honey, you look Asian because mommy is from Korea. Mommy converted to Judaism, or mommy didn't convert to Judaism, but we're sending you to the synagogue. So you are both Korean and Jewish. Fine, legit, or you're black and Jewish with a lot more, and that's a lot more accepted these days. But if they raise the kid to believe that we go to church for daddy, no offense, Joe, we go to church for daddy and synagogue for mommy, it's going to drive the kid crazy. But it's changed. Um, my own nephew just proposed to his girlfriend. He's Jewish, but only culturally. And my sister says, Moshe, please don't discuss the ceremony. I mean, they're going to get married in a nice, whatever spiritual ceremony. I'm on to weddings now. Um, and I called him up. I said, Aiden, don't worry. I'm not going to sit here and judge you. I love you. He hears me, knows me. Okay. Weddings are, again, very meaningful, loving, spiritual events. It all depends on what the, the the family is like. There's a lot of drama involved, which I'm sure you guys realize. Some of it having to do with mom wants this, dad wants this, the family wants certain kinds of things, and a lot of it should be the up to the couple. Again, my sister said she's divorced. Her ex-husband Rick and her got put their heads together. They're on good terms. They said, "This is how much we're going to give the kids, for the ceremony." Um, so I'm not going to get into all the drama, but many weddings these days are for an older couple, a second marriage. The kids are already grown. So I'm sharing with you, I'm going to do this screen share. This is a very interesting, um, this is a covenant of braiding. Is it showing up? Screen sharing? Yes. By, what is his name? Um, oh, I know why this is not a couple I did. This was in Rochester. Okay, this is not one of mine. But I have another one for a very interesting couple. So this is a traditional ceremony, and this is what they did. This is they get the names, and then the kedushin rather, the spiritual sanctification, and this was pre-wedding, I believe, and they made like what's in the old days they used to do is they would say, we will make a covenant before the wedding. It has the word brit is also involved. And they say, we will get married in a year. So it's an engagement, but this is what we're going to commit ourselves to do in advance. Now, I want to show you a typical, and by the way, I also sent you two funeral um, booklets, one for a woman here in town, and the other was an unveiling for my mother. I should have mentioned this, but I don't have the time. An unveiling is when they take the cloth off the stone. The stone's been put up after 11 months, and it's not a mini funeral, but it's like the same people might show up, but it's not going to be 100 people, it might be 10. It might be just the immediate family members. And they say, we dedicate this stone. So I did that. I didn't do my mother's funeral, but I did the unveiling. All right. So the wedding, Bert and Diane. Where's Bert and Diane? Okay, let's see here. Oh, that's why that's Bert and Diane, because I didn't do Bert and Diane's. Okay. Here is a Here is a wedding program. A wedding program um, like a funeral program has several purposes. It keeps the folks concentrating, looking at this booklet, and you have lots of people there who are sorry about that. There it goes again. A lot of people there who don't know the Jewish rituals. So this was a traditional one. It was not one I did, but I saved this booklet. I have all the ones I've done. Um, and in this particular couple listed all the persona, in the processional. Um, and then they explain here, this is why this is helpful. You're sitting in the audience. What's going on? What was it? So the tradition is, I'm sure some of you know, and some of you have even done this. Ketubah, the marriage contract, it is done in advance. It is I'm going to give you tradition and now contemporary. Traditionally, it was the man writes the ketubah for his wife. This goes back to the days of the Roman period. Sorry, and the contract spelled out, and not specifically, but it meant, she has the right to divorce him, or he will divorce her if he doesn't fulfill his obligations. And I always make a joke at the wedding, sometimes privately, not in front of her. I say, "Hey, Bob, if you don't provide your wife with pleasure, she has the right to ask for a divorce." Because back in the days there were guys who were, working 6 months of the year. Anyway, the ketubah is, oh, this is nice. They wrote down how they met. This is another cool thing. All right, so the ketubah is designed. I have a few, which I could send you guys another time. In fact, think I might have some because I keep it in a separate category. Let's see if I can send you. But some of you know because you've seen these. They're very ornate. They're beautiful. In the Middle Ages, they were decorated with calligraphy. So then, this is again, I talk about Zalman a lot, but in the typically in the 50s and 60s, you went to the rabbi, you did a ketubah, blah, 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 blah. You had the ceremony, and that was that. It was a nice ceremony. It was a great reception. But in the 70s, not only Zalman, but other people started saying, just like my friend Simcha, people started saying, let's do something more meaningful with this document. So the ketubah has now taken on the form of, here it is, ritual life cycle. I didn't queue these up. No, I'm sorry. I don't have the weddings in front of me. Why don't I have it here? Oh, because it's on another file. It's not is not with the synagogue. It's in my own private section. Okay, hang on, just a sec. I just think you might want to see these. Um, so the ketubah can be as meaningful as you want to make it. Avodah, life cycle. I'll show you, just send you one example of wedding website. No, I'm not going to do that one. Wedding archive. Okay, I have a bunch of them. I'm not going to show you mine. Mine ended in divorce anyway. Dubin and Grant is a good one. Epstein and Townsend is a good one. These are the wedding booklets. Okay, I'll send them as follow-up because I don't want to take more time. So the ketubah, as I said, began as the husband takes the obligation. The wife is everything about the old funeral, old weddings, there should be was she's not active. She walks around him 7 times and so on. If you've ever been to a traditional one or you watch Private Benjamin or something, but in this particular ceremony, he did cover her face with a veil. So they read the ketubah in the ceremony, but we signed the ketubah in the pre-ceremony. So there's a ceremony called bedecken, to deck. So you go in another room, let's say it's at a hall or it's in a synagogue, and it's a private area. There's only the witnesses, the bride and groom, maybe, and family members. And we signed the document. That's when I signed the state document also. Is that clear? I always make sure to sign the state's document too, because I want to make sure that it's, kosher. Um, and then they line up for the processional. That's why it's important to have a rehearsal dinner. Watching the clock, it's already 8:25. So the processional can be this one, Dodi Li, Yidid Nefesh, all these Israeli songs. My friend Neil, who's now divorced, I mean, he's remarried. No, I'm sorry, they're separated, they're not divorced. But when he and his then wife got married, he's a deadhead. I mean, he's a traditional Jew, and the rabbi was okay with it. He got married and walked down the aisle to Sugar Magnolia by the Grateful Dead. The couple I mentioned in L.A. Got married, and the rabbi it was an intermarriage. I'm joking, because he was Lubavitch and she was New Age Jewish, and so she wanted all kinds of groovy rituals that were very Jewish renewals. I want to do this. I want my girlfriends to do that. The rabbi didn't mind. He says, "I don't care what else you do, as long as the ketubah is done." So it was, and I got to sing the blessings. So the bedecken is the ceremony before the ceremony. Then we go down to the processional. Sometimes it's very simple. It's just 5 people, mom and dad over here, mom and dad over there. The chuppah, as you know, is very meaningful. The chuppah is the canopy. I can show you some great. I'll send these out to you, some pictures. Um, and again, today people will rent a chuppah. Some people would make their own. Other people will borrow from a friend. A chuppah can be. I have here in my house. I have 4 poles. I have a couple of Ukrainians also. I should let them out. But I have 4 8-foot poles, and Emily's laughing. And they're wrapped with a beautiful ribbon, and I haven't used them. No, we did use them here. No, I'm sorry, we used the ones at the synagogue. So you just take a big talit and you put the talit out. So I've done that in my backyard. I did a wedding in LA. I did a wedding for a couple. So all these things become a very spiritual part of the wedding. Circling the groom. Here again, because the women didn't do very much, it is a very beautiful idea. The man is in the middle, right, with his dad or his best man, well, he's in the middle by himself under the chuppah, and the wife walks around him 7 times. If you ever want to see a very traditional Hasidic wedding, there are some online. In these traditional ones, the woman is veiled, and her mother or the 2 mothers are walking her around him. It's very deep. I mean, it's Kabbalistically very deep because she's entering his soul. She's claiming him. So I'm not going to diss that. However, in the egalitarian age, a lot of people said, wait a minute, we're going to have 2 rings, not just 1 ring. He's not just taking her. We're marrying each other. So if we're going to have 2 rings and we're going to say, behold, you are consecrated to me according to the laws of Moses in Israel, she could say also. So in the conservative synagogues, they'll say, okay, she says a different line. She says, I am my beloved and my beloved is mine. So at least she says something. Also, vows are very common these days. Oh dear, I love you so much. I remember our first date, blah, 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 or you've touched my heart. It's very beautiful. So like I said, when Rod and I'm blanking on their names when they got married, the couple in Orange County, she did all that spirit. They wrote poems, they read poems. Again, the Chabad rabbi didn't mind as long as everything was done according to tradition. So now what some few couples will do is they'll say, I'll walk around him 3 times. She'll walk around me she'll walk around him 3 times. He'll walk around her 3 times, and then they'll walk around each other. It's a beautiful idea. It's hard to do in practice. Another thing is, of course, Israeli songs, Jewish songs, beautiful rhythm. And then we come to the reading we read the ketubah out loud, the rabbi does. And here's where, again, tradition and halakha, and I'm watching the clock, 8:30. I'm giving you tradition, okay? I'm not saying what you would do, let's say, if, I could get into the whole thing of intermarriage and how I decided to do that. But let's say they're both Jewish, they both want tradition, they're not Orthodox, so they want tradition. Here's the ring finger, okay? All right, so what they did was the old days, going back to the old days, they would give the woman an item of value. It was a coin. I'm not buying her, I'm just showing you, this is how I can show you I can take care of you. That evolved to be a ring. So then it evolved that they put the ring on the index finger, and there's 2 witnesses there, and the 2 witnesses, see, okay? And then, so he says the vows, and then they quietly switch it to the ring finger. Is that making sense? So I'll do that. So there's a number of things that I will do with couples. I'll end with this, about the intermarriage a little bit. Many times, goes back to the whole issue of all these ceremonies, Brit Milah, Brit Bat, weddings, funerals. A lot of times people assume, I don't want to say that word, assume means to make an ass out of you and me. They assume, oh, I don't want to do this. Or the rabbi just assumes, oh, they're not traditional. They don't want to do this. You'd be surprised how many people want to try interesting traditions. We're not in a rejection phase like our parents or grandparents were. Emily's nodding her head. She knows what I mean. We're not I don't do this. I don't keep kosher. I like to eat pork, you know. Instead, people are saying, well, what is this? So this is what happened with me very briefly. I was in my last year of rabbinical school, so I couldn't quite perform the wedding. But the first time I had to struggle with this, the couple said, I want to, says, I want to convert to Judaism. I can't do it right now because I'm in the middle of nursing school. Would you still do the wedding? So I said, okay, but we're not going to do this. We're not going to do. So we're 4 blessings instead of 7. No chuppah, you know, this. And as time went on, they said, but we want this. We want to have. So I evolved, and instead of doing, I don't do the traditional 7 blessings. We wrote our own. So over time, I have done. An older couple. She's Indian. He's Jewish. Kids are already grown. Another older couple. He's oh gosh, the guy who did my album, the guy who engineered my album, calls me up and says, "I want you to do our wedding." I said, "But William, you're British Catholic, and your wife is Bulgarian Orthodox." He said, "We don't care. We want you because we like you." So I did the wedding, and I just did it, and I did it, you know, spiritually. And then they had a Bulgarian woman come out and do all these dances. It was very hip. Williams, unfortunately, this guy died several years ago. Um, uh, I could tell you story because rabbis have these stories. I could tell you the worst wedding I ever did was substituting for a colleague. I was in New York. A guy calls me, says, I can't do this wedding. It's up in this country club in Monticello. I met the bride and groom, just, we didn't have Zoom those days. I met them online. I came to the wedding, and they're both drunk off their asses. They were both inappropriate. And, you know, I regretted that one. But most of the weddings I've done have been absolutely beautiful. Um, I don't want to cover divorces, except to tell you that just as we have the traditional wedding, it is traditional to have a get, GETT. And it's a whole other subject. Again, depending on Orthodox, conservative, reform. My ex and I, since we did such a beautiful wedding, we felt it was important for us to have a get. So we called my colleagues. It was at the rabbinical school. I was crying all day. She was crying all day. We tore up this beautiful ketubah that we had written. And the ketubah, the chuppah, I donated the chuppah to the rabbinical school. It's still hanging there. It was a very emotional day. But I did the get because even though she wasn't Orthodox, neither was I, she needed to remarry. And guess what happened? She remarried and she did have a daughter. So that daughter is legit. You know, that's the point. All right, it's overtime. I told you a lot of stories. I've tried to cover a lot. Is there something that I can answer that would be quick, or does somebody else have a funny story? Uh, have any? Oh, well, I got one. Very simple. For our Florida folks or any, who has been to a Jewish wedding here, except for Joe? I'm sure he has. But have any of you, Devin? Yeah, Sam, here in Colorado? Yeah. You want to share anything about anything neat, meaningful, spiritual, strange?
I mean, they had a really amazing location.
Yeah.
It was like in the mountains and the
Oh, up here.
views.
Yeah. Yeah. From Christina. Oh, you gotta go. It's just the same thing as I said. Christina just texted. It's the same thing as I would say with the to any wedding. Oh my, yeah, right. Um, I could have done this. I didn't have time. I have done. Oh, it's either 4 or 6 same-sex weddings, depending on how I count them. Um, uh, a gay couple in my synagogue in Long Beach, but they wanted Rabbi Bill Cutter to do them. He was a well-respected rabbi, So I got to be the cantor for these two guys. And then, believe it or not, at the prison, I got to do a couple of weddings. I did a wedding, and this is how I've evolved over time. I did a wedding for a couple, two women. This was in Connecticut. And at the time, and this is where I've evolved, I said, no, I can't do your wedding. I will come and be a guest at your wedding. I will say some things because it was an intermarriage. So there's the irony. There's the irony. There are conservative rabbis today, a conservative. I don't mean, you know, Republican conservative. I mean, they're just traditional rabbis who have evolved to the point where they say, I will do a same-sex wedding, but only if they're both Jews. I won't do it if they're. So I said to this to women, I'll be happy to come. And then, so they hired a congregational minister. And you know what? I regretted it because I would have done them more, not better, but I appreciated being there. The one thing that's a big deal for us folks is, and the one place where they draw the line is the conservative movement will throw you out if you do an intermarriage. The rabbis. The Reconstructionist movement is pretty more laissez-faire, but they frown on interfaith co-officiating. You know what I'm getting at? So if you have a Catholic priest and a rabbi, just like Joe was talking about with the funeral. So I did do one. I did one where because I felt that they wanted me to create something. So it was hard because, the Catholic guy wanted his stuff and I did my stuff. And it was like a push me, pull you. So I even don't like to do funerals or weddings with two rabbis because, I mean, you need one unified voice. It's not a question of ego. Other questions? All right. I'm not tired, but I do have to eat. I'm so glad Pablo and Darla are coming because we talk about this stuff too. I'll say it again. Life cycle events, funerals, wedding, brisses, all that stuff. Go to them when you have the opportunity, whether it's a friend or even if it's not Jewish, go to them so you can learn more. And there are multiple. These days the wedding business is so big, you can go on websites and you can find wedding planners, right? But you can also find spiritual wedding planners. Right here in town, there's a woman who's part of the actors community, and again, a couple I was very close to. They were seeing me for counseling. They didn't want me to do the wedding, intermarriage. So this woman, this spiritual woman, did the wedding. It was beautiful, and my nephew is probably going to have. I would not be surprised if my nephew has something like a canopy. It's very common these days, people borrowing Jewish symbols. We're in a different age, folks. What can I tell you? Aren't you lucky to have me because I'm not an Orthodox dude or conservative? But go to see as many of these as you can. Go online, and I'll send you some more stuff. So next week, do you want to? Are you comfortable? We're going to try to cover. I'll be satisfied if we cover Purim and Pesach. All right. The only reason is because they both come after our class is over. And in our case, come to the services that we're having, and I'll see everybody next week. All right. Hey, Taylor, I still want to hang out with your husband sometime. We've got to get him. Yeah, I mean, you may meet over, come over to the synagogue. We'll make an appointment, or we'll go out for coffee. Schedules. Okay. Thank you all. Everybody, God bless.
See
Good
ya.
night. Bye.
Have a sweet evening. All right. So Saturday morning, if you want to join me at the synagogue. All right. Bye now.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Debbie. Bye, Stephanie.